All right. Shall we begin?
Okay. Alhamdulillah.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you to Qalanjo Project for hosting this really wonderful event. And I'm really excited to be in conversation with the Somali filmmaker Abdulkadir Ahmed Said, who was the author of the film that we just watched. And the topic of our conversation today is about the culture of memory. And I want to begin, before we get to culture and memory, I would like to get a little bit more biographical information about you. And I was at the wonderful event that Qalanjo put on last Sunday, and I heard you say I heard you use the famous Fanon quote, which is, each generation out of relative obscurity must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. And you were born when Somalia was under Italian trusteeship. You came into adulthood at the height of Somali Pan-Africanist, scientific socialist kind of ideology. And you must have still also experienced strong cultural Italian influences within, especially Southern Somalia. I imagine in your youth, you were exposed to Italian, Soviet, American Bollywood cinemas, and you must have also been influenced by Somali cultural institutions, like traditional ones, medias like poetry, dance, folk stories, as well as new ones like music and theater. So I wanted to ask you to just give us a sense of your childhood and what drew you to film as a medium of storytelling. As a medium of storytelling.
As a medium of?
Storytelling.
Okay. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizer who organized this event, who brought us together. And I would like to thank and to be grateful to the young ladies who supported me during my cold stay in this town. And it's true, I was born in 1953, that my birth certificate, even the name is written in Italian format. That when I went to school and they graduated and all this, they had that's written that name. In 1970, suddenly changed it. Abdulkadir with a C coming and Abdulkadir. So my whole documentation changed it and everything changed. I became a refugee and they said, okay, what's your birth certificate? And the birth certificate is written in Italian. So then suddenly again, everything has changed again. So that shows you the migration of your own personal identity without talking about cultural, without talking about educational, without talking about this. Then the other thing is this. When we were young, we had two types of education. We went to school, Italian school, but at night we had the Ayeyo and the Awowe telling us stories, what I call the nocturnal education, the most powerful education. Why? Don't forget Aesop, the man who taught to the West the fables. It was an African, a slave from Nubia. And he went to Greece. And the Greece at that time, they didn't have elephants, what do you call lions, and all these things they had. But he told the story. And the storytelling originated from that place. And the fable is a form of education, not to do certain things and not to behave in certain manners. So our two education was complementing each other. The way to deal with the Western world and the way to be as yourself. It was complementing each other. And we shape it in that culture. We grow up in that culture. Then suddenly, jumping forward, we had a moment where we became refugees in the Civil War. What happened to my children? The IAU is not there anymore. There is no nocturnal education. Walt Disney and what do you call it, the other channel fills that gap where I, me, myself become predominant. And the Western education in the school is there. So at a certain point you ask yourself, what happened to that person? Where at certain points even Hoyo Matalo comes to be and become integrant of our way of being. And we have to be, that's a, culture in general is loses track by assimilation, by expanding, and by inclusion of other elements. Now we are sent to the level that we cannot even explain anything in our own languages. We have to use a foreign language. So in a couple of years, if we don't act properly, our language will disappear. And it's already in the list of the countries where the Somali language is in danger to disappear. How we are going to tell our future generation that the language of your grandma and your ma and everyone is disappearing? Why the language grows up, the culture grows up, if it's nurtured. But if it's deprived, say wallahi. Why wallahi deh? What I say wallahi? It's easy. Say wallahi wa gashi, culture ke gashi, mindset ke gashi, and all these things happens. I'm not blaming or saying you failed it. No, you didn't fail it. It's a natural process. But in the same time, there is a proverb in Somalia who says, every chicken eats the shit, but they differ in how they clean their beaks. So naturally, that we go off the ramp, but the question is how we recover ourselves and to be ourselves. Worst of all, we are divided into tribes. Reer Hebel, Halim Ghalif, and then how that will help us? I don't want to be pessimistic. Well, when I grew up in a district called Bondere. In Bondere, we didn't have tribal issue. And all the population were there. Every man and every girl was our brother and sister. I discovered which tribe I belong to a gunpoint. To tell you the honest truth, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Balat. A certain group, they came with the guns, with other officers, with other young people who acted like a guerrilla warfare. And they said, you are fakash, so means piglets indirectly for the people who don't belong to that tribe. You see, piglets, fakash means piglets. And the other people who knew me, they said, if those are fakash, you are worse than them. So I have been surrounded by two enemies, one with a gun and the other one with another gun, and I'm in the middle. And I was in the district of Balat. And the elders were sitting at the textile factory. And it's about 2 kilometers. We had to walk in the middle of the road. On the one side, there was the people who condemned us to be fakash, and the other side, the people who protected us said, those are fakash, you are worse. And we have to walk there. We went to the elders and they said, we caught these people who were hiding in this neighborhood. And the people, they started laughing and they said, why? They don't belong to this tribe. And I said, hold a second. Who are you to tell these people they don't belong to that tribe? No, we know that they worked for the government, while the 3 others were officials of the military, colonels of that. I said, have you finished? Yes. Who are you? We are a militia of this. I said, okay, we know these people. And this is their town. They said, which tribe they belong? The elders expected us to know which tribe we belong. But me and the other 3 officers, we didn't know what the fuck tribe we are. And they asked us which tribe, and we become, I said, I don't know. I don't know. And the elder said, this tribe, this is this tribe, this is this tribe. And we have been freed. And while we were walking the 2 kilometers from the textile industry of Balad to the Balad district. They said, what does explain to you that you are so trapped? He said, I don't know. We both discovered that we are that kind of trap. But we never internalized that. We never internalized that. And we never grew up with that notion. Every home was our home, every daughter was our sister, and every boy was our brother. And that is a sense of cosmopolitan that today has been fragmented, does not exist. You go to a coffee shop, they say, oh, I think we're means I came here to have a cup of tea. No, that my money has to have what do you call a tribe written on it? I don't know that mind. How the culture grows up in that mind. That's something that I'm asking you. This is your future. And that's the reason why I quoted Frantz Fanon. When we have to know it, what we have lost to be a refugee. I think I answered your question.
But we still haven't heard why you became a filmmaker.
Oh, why I became a filmmaker? It's simple. You see, I always loved cinema. And I was living when I was young in a district called Village Habiba that today doesn't exist. And is in, if those who remember that, is in the central of town where today they built what they call it, the Senate. The ground zero of Mogadishu. So you part from there, you see, and the other side you go to Shibis and all this thing. And there was a village called Village Habib. And there was a cinema there, Hadramout, call it Hadramout. I love cinema that every night I used to watch a movie. And the people they start knowing me and they start paying the cinema ticket. And I used to help them rolling the film. So, you know, during the day you roll the film in order for the night to be projected. And in that moment you start learning how the scene is constructed. And I used to watch. You put the projector, a small mirror, and the mirror projects back to the screen, and you used to watch the movie there before anyone else. And that was my love for cinema. And I studied cinema, started to become a photographer, studied it. Then I studied political science in Moscow. And I said, okay. And I knew that in Moscow there was a famous school called VGIK. And I said, okay, political science, okay. The first thing that I asked when I landed there, they sent us to a medical checkup that those foreigners, they don't bring disease in the country. When I went out from the medical checkup, they said, where is the film school? I said, why? I want to know where's the, they told me the map, there is a metro, you take this. The first day, without even going to class to film, I went there and I started enrolling there. They said, but you didn't come here. I said, external student. Okay, fine. At your own risk. I said, fine. So in the morning, I have to study political science. After lunchtime, I have to grab my sandwich, go into that, and study cinema. Then come back at night, study the song. And I used to ride 2 horses. Although there is a proverb who says, "Man yarkabu farasayni shaqaddu burhu." So means whoever rides 2 horses, his ass will suffer, you see. And so I had to do that, and I had to do that course, this course, finito. And I ended up, came back, and they have been sent to study photography and graphic design in Rome. Directly to I was at the university in Bologna and studied history of art and all in Ravenna. I said, I'm not interested in history of art. Cinema. So I did the same example in Moscow, the 2 things, studying history of art, graphic designer, and cinema. That was my passion always. And I became a bad filmmaker and a bad teacher of what do you call it, art and everything. So, master of none. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Well, I would disagree about the bad filmmaker. I think
You see, there is an Italian proverb who says, learn the art and put aside. Why? When you start making art, you don't earn a living. You understand? Van Gogh died of tuberculosis and hunger. And after several years, he had in the same room where he passed away 40 of his paintings, and nobody wanted to buy them. And now today, how much is each painting? Millions, okay? But if I start making pizzas, I will earn the living. But if you say, I'm a filmmaker, okay, fine. You're a dreamer, get lost. What else you bring on the table? Nothing.
Well, you weren't just a filmmaker, you were also the director of the Somali Film Agency, which...
No, I was not the director of film agency. I was the director of international relationship of Somali Film Agency. And now, today, I'm acting the role of what they call it, advisor to the Minister of Information in the film. It's an uphill battle. It's not an easy task. Why people, they say, film, why are you doing that? Is something that we have to deal with.
Well, I mean, part of preserving cultural memory are these cultural institutions that need state funding and support. And in Somalia, we used to have the Somali Academy of Sciences and Arts, and we had the Somali radio, and there was a lot of state investment in the cultural cultural institutions, including the Somali Film Agency. And we don't actually have a lot of that history written down. And so I wanted to ask you, what can you tell us about the history of the Somali Film Agency and what this institution meant in terms of what kind of films it would promote, it would create, it would distribute, and what was its role in Somali cinema?
Okay. Let me give you a brief summary of that history. Somali Film Agency was established in 1973. Before, there was a department at the Ministry of Information who used to take pictures of the people of the delegation and the government official at the Ministry of Information. Then later on in 1973, the Revolutionary Council established Somali Film Agency. And they were in charge in three factors. Number one, documenting the history of Somalia photographically. Number two, distributing and commercial cinemas, and they had cinemas. And number three, the selling of audiovisual material like negative, paper, chemical, and all these things. And whatever is involved in the filmmaking process. So they were representative of all the negative company, cameras, and all these things. And Somalia had, at that time, in Mogadishu, 19 cinema halls. Somalia used to import 365 films a year. So every night there was a film. And we had 19 cinema, excluding the military schools, the police school, the prisons, and all these things. And Somali Film Agency used to. The income generated by that, it was used for the activity of the Somali Film Agency. Not only that, Somalia used to make every year 20 documentaries. And every month, a newsreel. Why there was no television at that time. Newsreel, or the event that happens. Somalia had at that time 19 director of photography and cameraman, where they were trained in United States of America, they were trained in England, they were trained in Germany, they were trained in Russia, they were trained in Pune, and all of these things. We had 19, we had 18 sound engineers. The negative, we didn't have a laboratory. They used to take it to London, where they kept the negative. And there was a technician who used to go every month to take that film. But what I'm trying to tell you, in East Africa at that time, Kenya had 2 director of photography. Ethiopia didn't have even 1. Djibouti didn't exist. I was the one who trained it in Djibouti to establish the film in 1977 when they were training the pictures, to have photographers. Why the French, they didn't allow them to document their own history. And I used to train them outside the border, Wajal, what they call it, in a carpentry shop. I used to sleep in the carpentry shop and teach the future director of photographers and all these things. That is the struggle that we went. Then later on, you have to realize we had an historical stripe. Somalia created, among other nations, the Pan-African Federation of Filmmakers. Somalia was a member. Haji Usman Aga Kombe, it was the delegate who created, with other four, a Tunisian, an Algerian, an Egyptian, and Haji Aga Kombe. They were the founders of the Pan-African Federation of Filmmakers, the continental organization. Somalia was a founding member. The French intellectuals and the French cheerleaders, I call them cheerleaders. They say, in Africa, the Francophone countries, they were the first one who made the film in Africa. Bullshit. Somalia, in 1959, 60, it was the first, after independence, before independence, while they were preparing, there was a filmmaker who made a film called Love Is Not a Joke. Mabrouk. Then, in 1963, there was Haji Aga Kombe who made the film Mi Magano. Then in 1973, there was Yusuf Haji Adan, not Yusuf Haji Adan, what do you call it? Abdulkadir, what do you call it? The Khomeit Dani Harago, the other film. So all of that. Then in 1983, there was Saeed Salah who made the Somali Darwish. So, but we had that history. And we have to be proud of it. It's not written, it's not known. And the Somalis, I met a filmmaker who said that he thought that he was the first one Somali filmmaker who invented the wheel. Not knowing that we had that history. And we have to realize that our photographers, and you have in the album, you see your mom, the picture with this photo with the Colorado, it was done by the photographers. The camera in Somalia came in 1893. 1893, the first camera came in that time. And due to the British and Italian, what do you call it? They had their own crew and their own photographer. Well, they were photographers. But before that, they had the people who drew the sketch during the war of British colonialism. They drew in sketch while they had to publish, but they were embedded to the military conquest and everything. And you go to historical sites, they have sketches, but they didn't have camera. So that is the history, brief history of Somali cinema. I think that I answered you.
Yeah, no, that was really wonderful. And I think you've shared so much of this history that we have lost, that we don't know. I mean, the fact that someone can come to you and say, I'm the first Somali filmmaker, tells you about the kind of the missing link in the transmission of this history, and the inability for younger generations, especially people who were born after the war, to know what happened during, before the war. And one of the most important vehicles of cinema is as an archival project, right? The image is the most accessible archive that we have of this past that seems almost unimaginable for younger generations, of a Somalia before the war, of a functioning state, of even certain cultural practices that no longer exist. Watching your film, we wouldn't know about these types of fishing villages, or the types of mechanisms that they would use, the ways that they would create. They don't have fishing rods. We would imagine a fishing rod in a Western society, but in the film you see these other cultural practices that we don't have anymore. And so I wonder what you think of cinema as an archive, and the ways that these images are circulating, especially now with younger generations who have a certain nostalgia, or this kind of nostalgia or desire for reclaiming this cultural memory.
You see, my dear, you bring a painful memory that I tried to avoid when I was telling you about the history of cinema. But I'm obliged that at the end of the day, for me to heal and for the young people to be aware of the mess that we are in. The civil war in Mogadishu started 26 December 1990. The 29th December, I went to the Somali Film Agency. And I went directly to see what the situation is. I went to the archive. The archive of the Somali Film Agency had 169,000 negatives, photographic negatives, which was the beginning of the revolution till that day, what event we had. So the alphabetization, the fighting against the dunes, all the programs they do that, they were inside there, 169,000 negatives. The funny thing is this, the archive had the shelves in glass and everything, air conditioned. There were chairs and everything. And so, but on the floor, they put all the negative and they burned it. But they didn't loot neither a chair, nor a table, nor anything. But they destroyed what? The negative. And I started wondering why they chose to destroy the negative. It means that we don't want a history. It means that, I remember the quote that they say, when you don't know from where you come, any asshole can hold your hand and drive you to your own destruction. And I realized that was one of the dangerous aspects where we are facing it. There was anger, yes, I understand. There was anger against a regime, I understand that. But why destroy the collective memory of that society? Why? The funny thing is this, all the documentaries that we shot at that time, the negative is in London, is in Cairo, is in Korea, is in Italy, and it's registered under the name of the Somali government. How we are going to retrieve that? Who is aware of that? All the documentaries that they destroyed the photographic evidence, but we were shooting documentary and photographic in that level. So there exists that negative material. So who's going to do that? The ministry, they have priorities. And it's not included that. And what do you think, the donors are interested in your history? No, they are not interested. I'm very sorry to tell you. Somali so means the man with the hunchback, he knows how to sleep it. And that is the situation that we are facing it. If you say, I want my regard, I said, hold a second. What's the priority here, man? Hunger, medication, or negatives? What comes first? It's a luxury, no? You understand? So culture becomes what? A luxury. It's not even what do you call it, human rights, no. Look at the human rights in the third world. It's not included culture. To have an education is a right, right? But they don't talk about that. But they talk about what? Oh, don't have to treat the women in this way. Don't have to treat the prisoners in this way. What about my culture, man? What about my education, man? That's a luxury, man. Forget, man. For what reason? Mm-hmm. I want to leave you with that answer. So you have to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as someone who's done archival research, so I'm a historian, I work primarily on the Italian colonial period. And most of those archives are in Italy because all of our archives in Somalia have been destroyed. And the most important archive we have are our living elders who, some of those histories have been passed down, but not all of them. And that transmission of that knowledge, of that history, of that culture, of those traditions is so critical. And without these state institutions, like the one that you're describing being destroyed, we're losing so much.
culture, and when you preserve the culture, you shape the narrative of your country and who you are. That's the vital, important element, preservation of culture. Not tribal culture, but societal culture. What is important is this, that a young girl, the other day, 2 days ago, she went to one of those archives and she discovered a Somali song, music and everything in 1800. But according to our historians, Somali music started in 1950. Dair cinema, someone said, no, bullshit. 1800, there was a Somali song with the Somali music. Whoa. How many people know that? How to make accessible to that? You understand? So, today our history is preserved in Western museums. And we don't even bother about looking at, and you're talking about national identity. Madmado e bakuyakan. That's you know that what I mean. Madmado e bakuyakan. Eh? Madmado e bakuyakan is a form that during the drought, the people go to the mosque to pray, and certain people, they find an opportunity when someone wants to have someone reading the Quran, he touches the back of someone saying, follow me, indirectly without, and he goes to the home and to read the Quran, no? Someone, he cut what do you call it, a bug from the back of someone, and he thought that he was touching him. He followed him, he went to the house, they started reading the Quran and they gave him the kitab. And he said, Surah Subah, this is called collective reading. And when he came to say it, he said, he didn't know how to read the Arabic and he didn't know the Quran. He said, they passed it. They immediately understood that this man was only, he brought here for hunger. So that our situation and mindset is that. So today we are saying, so what we are expecting. So understanding cultural values and all is too foreign for us. We are solving about how to accommodate rare heaven, how to bring rare heaven. But what about that is too far for us. It's too foreign for us. Yeah. Do you understand what I say? So we become like zombies or extraterrestrial when we start talking about those subject matter and those issues. They are not in the vision of pragmatism, the pragmatic vision of the state solving situation in our country, that situation. That is the situation.
Yeah. Okay, so in the interest of time, I want to open it up for the Q&A. So if anybody has any questions.
Sorry for disturbing you and breaking your, what do you call, hope and aspiration. But it's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle. So you have to be ready. Yes.
Bufo, oftentimes, first question people don't ask, I ask you the second question.
Shoot straight.
First of all, I want to thank you for hosting me in your home twice in Cape Town.
Cape Town. I call it Cape Town, not Cape Town.
I call it Cape Town. So I really am glad that you're here. I'm here to see my friend Bufo. I came from Virginia just to come to attend this. You've left off your bio, Cape Town. What do you do in Cape Town?
Ha! Don't go there. Don't go there.
But you and I had a discussion before, and I think the large audience may discuss this as well. During the civil war in Libya, each group will take over a town, and that group will protect the municipality, the banks, and the museum. When they lose the war, and another group takes over, they will do the same. Now, Somalis are not less educated than the Libyans. But Somalis destroyed everything we own. You ask why, and I really would like youngsters to speculate why we have destroyed our own history, while another community, less educated, protected their history.
Well, Shega, I will tell you something. First and foremost, in Cape Town, I don't call it Cape Town, I call it Cape Town. Keep it white and keep it light. It's a striving for the white settlers in Cape Town to be a white city, you see, and they're negating the other population of this. But nevertheless, I went there, I started training filmmakers, South African filmmakers, the black South African filmmakers. I was the one who trained that, and we had the first 4 filmmakers, and now they are about 16. And I'm being there, and they told me, you are not Somali, you are one of us. But the funny thing is that, and I trained more than 3,000 students there. But the question is, when I always went to the Somalis and I said, come and join this workshop, they say, Ader, Rashin and Rad, they say,
Special film, special film,
film waxa kasta baa noqoto Ader wuxuu ku leeyahay mufan raadsanaya iga dhab sheekadan. Okay, but nevertheless, you asked why other societies defend their own value and why we don't defend. In 1977, when I was a photographer in the war, we used to go in a nomadic village. The people will leave and they go behind us. And we ask them, where is the enemy? They said, down there, where they were telling us, you go to a farmer village. He stays there, he doesn't move. These other societies are farmers, not nomads. They stay in their own place and they defend it. And now how I mentioned Daxinjiran Tigina. And that is our fault line. maxaa laga sheegay Minneapolis wallahi deeqa laga bixina gay Minneapolis but not what is going on. Weey laakiin ninka dhul aamina allo aamine ninka dhul aamino allo aamine he stays there. He knows that this is his hut. He protects. Geljire, he doesn't have even a hut. His home is mobile. Or sarna wa gura miri mesha sutega. Mesha rabutega. And that is our culture. So what do you expect from him? To defend something? He doesn't have the notion. Nation state, he doesn't have a nation state. So that is the reason. But you say this to a nomad, you are declaring war to him.
Could it be another factor beside Giljire?
No, but the other factor, I don't have anything in common. To give you a simple example, and this is touches several aspects. We talk about the Somali language. Somali, several society ay kakoobantahay. Soma, what's our language? From 2 regions, from Galkayo up north. What happened to the rest of the Somalis? They are not included. Who are the heroes in Somalia? Muhammad Abdullah Hassan Wilwal, and what happened to the others? They are not part of it. What happened to the Mamahi, the Somali? Giljira Mamahi. What happened to the other Mamahi? They don't exist. Why you expect me to be part of that society when my language is not recognized, my proverb is not recognized, my cultural value is not recognized? I don't give a damn about that.
So now you are touching the other factor that I was thinking.
Yeah, but I'm telling you,
Ownership.
ownership kuwajira. Why suddenly yesterday, when they were struggling for independence, they were not an ethnic group, one ethnic group, Giljira Mahin. They were a coalition of people from all over Somalia who fought for an independence. And everyone thought that this was his own right. And we achieved the independence. Lakin waxaa timid reerkii aawe, Khadija aawe, Halima aawe. Khadija Halima, they don't build a nation. Do you understand? Very sorry to tell you that, but this is our truth. Niman runtu u sheegina beena u qarsoon. The one who doesn't tell the truth, he is lying. It's our ugly reality. And we have to be frank and honest if we want to heal. But if you don't want to heal, then what? Empty. Sorry, eh?
No, don't apologize. You're telling the truth.
Okay. What else? Now shoot straight.
I have a question. So
Yes.
does that mean that having a common
Habibti, you eat the pizza. Say it loudly.
does that mean that having a common enemy is what brought this coalition together? Like, do you have to have like a common understanding, or were Somali people always in this coalition, or did it take having this
Definition of enemy.
definition?
What is the enemy?
Was it the
My enemy is you. I don't have any foreign enemy. That is what I believe. Diriskaygi aan aniga colaad u qaaday. How the heck was that? Enemy banaankayga maanaya mindida ii wata, I don't see it. Laakiin adaan ku ilaashanaya. Hey, where we are going? مفهمي horta waxaan kaa wado? The notion of enemy حتى and the coalition and notion generic enemy we devaluated waa sarrifnay. أول boqol aan haysanay 20 aan ka dhignay 50 aan ka dhignay 20 aan ka dhignay 10 aan ka dhignay 5 aan ka dhignay $1 ay taagnay dollarka waa kasii baxday waxay taagan tahay cents. reerka naftirkiisa yaan is aaminayni. soo ben reer hebel my love hebel هي علين هبل هي وين محاكا فيلي مرك انا ببناك دويما قال كعي ما هي قبان وحي لذن وحبا دورون من إله عرك دقاحية كصوت دادي انتي كقلي إله عرك دقاحية كصوت دادي لكن ما هذا سي قبان مغلي شو وحاوي وحان كاقو ذا mentality جيني ورنا اسبدلي we have to say stop, reverse, and say, how do we change that? And that is the role of any artist, to speak the unspeakable and to say the unsayable. odayaasha qaarkood waxay leeyihiin war adeer dhalinyarada waxa looma sheego lama qalbi jibiyo war maya anigu kuma qalbi jibinay faraska waxa usha loogu dhuftaa inuu orodka ka badiyo waa ina waajibkayga aniga ما نولانا إلى الأبد مديرا نولانا لكن مدرس وأنا واحد دافع سوما and to be honest كي ونعيها ونع كي وجعل لها وجعل قاركود وحي إلى ذن I will tell you an example أو على حنون بدن I was in Cape Town a friend of mine who was the 8th generation Pakistani Somali 8th generation. He was abused, misused during the Civil War. And we used to play football in a neighborhood and everything in Somalia. I haven't seen for a long time, but I saw him in Cape Town. I started speaking him in Somali. He replies back to me in English. I couldn't understand. I say, what's wrong? He said, Abdulkadir, don't talk about that. And all our conversation was binary, what do you call it? Somali, English. And he was the 8th generation Somali. Can you imagine that trauma? He was born in Mogadishu. He spoke Somali. And we used to play football together in the neighborhood. And he had that trauma. We went together. At that time, I used to smoke. And we went to buy it to, they call it the street. He would take me to the train station in Cape Town, accompanying me, and I bought cigarette. A young man was there and said, I bought from him the cigarette. And after that, when the people left, he said to me, other hand, سؤال مكو يدين كلام. I said, yes, welcome. Somali حاجة كبرت. maxaa tiri soomaaliga xaggee ku baratay adeer maxaa dhacay waa si fiican ugu hadlaysaa adeer so automatically aniga soomaalinimadu iga saaray mugta markaas masaas ahaa marka waxaan yidhi waa jeclahay aniga challenge noocaas oo kale markaan I like that challenge waxaan yidhi okay aniga adaa laysoo kaa diri waayo oo maxaa dhacay jaajuusiinta waddankan maa ka mid tahay irkaadu waxaan ma jaajuus miihi waxaan ka hadal ninkan iga ag taagan soomaali waa haddaan ku iraa adeer misku cayaarayna wi maxaa dhacay ma hadda idin keentay ninka hindiga bakistaaniga hindiga inuu soomaaliya wallaahi waa billaahi watallahi ninkan waa soomaali adeer waa sheegaa naga dhaa waxaan dhegeyso talyaaniga jooga soomaali ah greek soomaali ahaa jiray turkish soomaali ahaa jiray may maqlaysaa carab soomaali ahaa jiray all of this way jireen markaas masaas baa ilaa ma anaan fahmin waxa colaadda noo keenayba waa waxaas wey wuxuu aaminayba colaadda meesha cosmopolitan cultureki wuxuu ka dhigay inay colaad nooga timid mugta ma anaan fahmin uu yiri waxaas ummadood waxa noo keena colaadda waxa noo keena waa eega markaas rabbanaa yusuf ilaah kula garab galo what else you can say jo waxaan kaaga wadaa waa fahmaysaa marka adiga aragtid mujtamacaga sorry you see I have to change gears now when you see that your society is miseducated and they believe that that is education then you are fucked up how you are going to tell you oh you are on the wrong path how you are the wrong man well when ignorance becomes knowledge the knowledgeable person becomes ignorant why he doesn't know how knowledge to deal with simple as that
Parable of the cave.
eh?
You described in the parable of the cave.
yes so at any case waxa waaye aqoon darrada markay aqoon noqoto aqoonta naftirkeedu waxay noqonayaan jaahil waxaa la leeyahay ninka aqoonta leh ma fahmaysid ay maxaana fahmayn war adeer ma fahamsanid maxaana fahamsanayn waa ABC ma adeer wax kala jiro aadan fahamsanayn muxuu yahay waxaan fahamsanayn waa jaahilnimo I don't understand jaahilnimo la cilmiyay adigu ma fahmi kartaa that's it the point what else should
Soomaalida waxay dhahdaa markii wax lii sheego wax fahma marka how would you have us as young folks who are interested in the arts use the art forms as a way to tell these kinds of traumas and a way of healing?
That is a question of $1 million. First and foremost, unite yourself. Unite yourself. Build something together. Don't expect anyone else to build for you. But build on a collective base. But not on a sectarian base. Red Hebel hadan nahi, left Hebel hadan nahi. At that time you fail it. Already you fail it in present. You might do something, but at essence it's empty. Number one. Number two, be honest and humble. You don't have to do a mega Hollywood series. No. You don't entertain. Happy ending maha. Well, it has to be simple, straightforward story. Not riot, but simple story that touches the film. That's the point. But built in a collective manner. Why you have to re-educate our people. You have to leave a legacy. That is the fundamental thing. According to me, I might be wrong. But that is what I think. What else? You're so tired already? Yes.
On a lighter note, I have a question.
Habibti, I am too young. I cannot hear you.
I'm just asking to switch things into a more lot of foreign cinema, like Soviets. I know in Somali there's a lot of Bollywood, Indian cinema. So could you tell us your favorite movies, foreign movies, and what impacted you?
Okay, let me tell you one thing. My experience with cinema. You see, cinema, when you go to the cinema, you go in a dark room. And when you go to the dark room, the role of the director is to hold your hand and say, let me take you to a journey. And he takes you to a journey. In 15 minutes, you have to trust him or say, get man, and you leave the cinema. But the emotional thing and psychological thing when you go to a cinema is to see the psychological effect that have to raise questions in you. But not a hamburger cinema or McDonald's cinema, what I call it. You eat and you leave and tomorrow you forget, they go to another, it doesn't have taste. But it has to instill in you a sense of question. My first, I love it indirectly without knowing anything about neorealism, the cinema of Italian cinema, Rossellini, De Sica, and all these things. It had an impact on me. Well, it resonated to me. I saw myself in the streets and the bicycle thieves, and it related to me like my whole story. But when I went to eat and to study at Moscow, and I saw this film, I said, whoa, I know those films. They say, how do you know this film? But they didn't realize that when I was a child, I was working in the cinema, no? And they tell me, you know where it comes from? No. It's a neorealism. I say, who is the neorealism? It's Andersen. And why is the cinema of the poor man reflecting the sociological aspect of life? Not telling fantasy story of the extraterrestrial and boom and machine and explosion and all that. A simple story. But that simple story has to leave a taste of memory in you. It touches you. Then I studied what they call Soviet cinema. I studied Chinese cinema. I studied Indian cinema. I studied all of this. And I spent my time and my youth consuming huge archives of cinema. Why? When you consume cinema, you learn a lot of those stuff. So my favorite cinema, I grew up in Hollywood junkies. I was also a Hollywood junkie, you see. But why I say Hollywood junkie? In cinema, in the world, there are two types of cinema: mechanical cinema and poetry cinema. You want to study American cinema? Mechanical cinema. I go, I grab a kid, finito. Entertainment, escapism. But when you ask why, settlers, they never tell you the story why, but they tell you the event, but they never tell you why. Well, if they start telling the why, they question themselves. Hollywood cinema never ever deals with that why. Why is settler cinema? They have to justify the movement, the action, everything that they move forward. And that's the difference of other cinema. Why the other cinema has to be rooted, saying you are here, you do this, and you object that. And this is the arc of your life. And this is the transition of your life. And this is how you study your life. And that is how you regulate your life. So I think that I explained it to you. Mm-hmm. Or there is something missing?
No, explain it.
A question. Most countries, they receive films they don't really produce.
Huh? Most countries,
third countries probably, they receive movies in their theater they don't produce, but they dub to their language.
They talk there.
Yeah, their language.
Mm-hmm.
So the masses can understand what the movie is all about. For Somalia, the film speaks either Italian, English, or Hindi, as the lady said. The masses will not understand the point of the movie if they did, would this have changed our attitude?
I missed the question, Ibrahim. Can you tell me in a simple language?
Yes. The movies in Somalia,
No, I know
they don't
Somali.
speak Somali.
Uh-huh.
If they did, would that have changed it?
You see, the Somali language, what do you call it, cinema, this is the effect that came. In 1985, we had a crisis
Right.
in Somalia.
Right.
It was an economic crisis. There was no hard currency.
Mhm.
So in consequence, we cannot bring foreign films. And I was the production manager of the Somali television at that time. And I said, okay, fine. Then a man with a hunchback, he knows how to sleep.
Yes.
Nobody tells him how to sleep when you have a hunchback. I said, okay, fine. Let's start. I call it young director. I said, let's start making Somali films. They said, Ruwait. No, I say, no, no Ruwait. Let's start making, this. So they didn't know. I say, okay, fine. You will go there. Sketches. You know sketches about comic sketches? Let's do this comic. We shoot in 2-3 days, pump. We edited, we ran. The people start loving. The television from 2 hours went to 6 hours. And from 6 hours to 8 hours. Do you understand? We start bringing the humor of the Somali. Then the group who was interested, the Somali cinema owners like Somali, Al Gabon, everything, they were owned by people. They had their own crew. They start buying cameras from Dubai, and they start saying, oh, this is my cousin, he knows how to use the camera, and they start making ruwayat. And they start doing the ruwayat. Okay, fine. But what happened? They start talking in Somali. Then another group said, okay, hold a second. What happens if we start dubbing the films in Somali? And they said, okay, fine. Let the thousand flower blossom. We brought the other one, they start dubbing. And the people at the cinema, we had a huge impact. You understand now? The dubbing of the film started in cinema Somalia. Wabri, they started, the people who owned that, they started dubbing. And they started Jackie Chan film. They said, can you imagine? And then they entered the main. Now I went to Mogadishu in September, and I saw an entire television station that has an Indian dubbed in Somali. And they start taking this and telenovelas. And I watched it. I said, motherfuckers, who are those? I went there to the television stickers, and I discovered who the people who were students at that time. But now they made a grand scale. They were dubbing the whole films in Somali and all these things. What is that? But they are missing, but at least they are doing something. Do you understand? They are missing the point. They are not shooting straight. Why? You cannot have an Indian cultural value translated into Somali or a Turkish cultural value translated into Somali. They are crisscrossing. They confuse the people. Do you understand? Well, to give you an example, honesty in Somalia is considered understood in one term. In Indian, honesty is considered another term. In Turkey, honesty is considered another term. But when you start talking about honesty, which honesty are we talking about? Which term are we talking about? That is the simplest thing that the people cannot realize. There is no honesty culturally universal into every language. I think that I answered that question. Yes.
af Soomaali waan ku hadlaa qof kasta af Soomaali
تفضل af Soomaali waajo.
so aniga waa inay bartaan
waayo maxaa loo weeraraa ninka
way garanayaan af Soomaaliga
wada shud.
so aniga waxaan kusoo koray xeryaha qaxootiga kun iyo adiga 90kii markaan hadda aan teenager soo noqday shaleemooyinka waxaa laga daari jiray filmaan hindi ah oo la soo dhaab karay af Soomaali waa lagu soo dhaab karay marka waxaa xasuustaa iskuulka oo soo gambiya shaleemadan soo galaa filimkan daawadaa habeenkii haddana waxaa laga yaabaa film maraykan inaan daawado kan maraykanka ingiriis baa ku daawan jirnay laakiin hindiga af soomaali baa lagu daawan jiray wayna socotay ilaa hadda waxaan u maleeyaa waa lasoo turjumaa filmaan badan oo ama hindi ka yimaada ama turki ka yimaada ama korean ka yimaada magaranaysaa sinimooyin kala duwan mararka qaar marka waxaan ka fikiraa saameynta ay society-ga ku yeelatay filmaantan lasoo turjumay waxyaabaha qaar aan u fiirsado waxaa ka mid ah tusaale qofka midabkiisa camal badanaa qofku markuu cad yahay oo magaranaysaa waxaa la leeyahay waa qof cad oo qurux badan oo magaranaysaa qofkii kale oo midabka caadiga oo Soomaaliga lana waxaa laga yaabaa in laga dhigo qof ama magaranaysaa aan attractive ahayn marka ma isleedahay sababtoo ah markaa fiirisid hadda hindida cinemagooda especially hadda Bollywoodka waxaa jira kan kuwan kale iyo bahalkiga badanaa waxay soo muujiyaan dad cadcad qurux badan tan jilicsan dadkooda saxda ama dad dheer ma garanaysaa markii la fiiriyo ma isleenahay saameyn wuxuu nagu yeeshay ah image-ka iyo sida aan nafteena u aragno hadda waxyaabo dhibaatooyin badan oo sida tusaale iscadaynta iyo ma garanaysaa filterada la isticmaalayo iyo waxaas dhan saameyn cinemagaas oo lasoo turjumayo wadamada kale nooga yimid ma ku leedahay society-ga haddii ay jawaabtu haa tahayna sideen u bedeli karnaa dhibaatadaas
fiirti horta waa mahadsantahay su-aal muhiima waaye It's a very important question. Hindiya ha u qaadanin one hindi inay jirto. Hindiya waxay leedahay 76 sinimo. 76 luqadoodna waa lagu sameeyaa. Telugu, mataqaanaa Hindu, waxaan oo dhan ay wada leeyihiin. Marka waxaa jiro madowga meel ay u badan yihiin sidiyaa la yidhaahdaa. waa madowga Afrika ka yimid waa sidiis la yiraahdaa ciyaartii nuumbiga ku jirto saarkiya ku jiro gabdhaheedii waxaan waa ku jira laakiin filmadaas anaga noloma keeno maxaa dhacay ganacsatada hinduga hindu waxay aad u adeegaan maxaa dhacay cinemada India we are talking about now Hindiya cinemada mafia xukunta maaha nin caadi maaha gangsters xukumo hadda ka ganacsanaysidna you have to be member of the gangs especially Africa markay timaado saddex ninaaba qaabilsan suuqa Africa oo dhan hindida inay siiyaan waana hindu mimaqle filimada ugu raqiisanna waa noloo keena trash movie B movie waxa la yiraahdaa wax noocan waa noloo keena laakiin Hindiya filimada ugu khatarsan oo taariikhda cinema Hindiya ay samayso we don't even see mana naqaano maxadkooda ugu weyn Pune la yiraahdaa dadka ka soo baxo waa sharp shooters we don't see their films
yes I love that you're a film buff you watch a lot of movies what are you currently watching that's like what are you currently watching how that one's currently that's considered.
Sorry, I don't.
What are you currently watching?
What are you?
What movies are you watching now?
Oh man, I watch every junk, man. When are you gonna watch every junk?
Your top 5 milkshake.
No man, I'm telling you.
What's a recent film?
No man, what the recent film is that I watched an American series where they talk about a honest series about the settlers. The settlers, American settlers, powerful. And I said, whoa, at least they are telling the truth now.
What is it called?
I don't record, but the first episode now came out about the war between the Mormons and what do you call it, the thing about American Primeval. Oh, that is the reason. And I said, whoa, they are telling the truth. Let me say, go back. So at least they are revealing the internal contradiction of the settlers, you see, and the brutality of the settlers. It came to time now to tell them. Instead of John Wayne, wipe them out. I will clean this, but I will do that. Now, at least they are talking about it. So that is what I like it about. But what is the films that struck a nerve in me is a film that started questioning me. When I finish it, I have to feel wounded. You know the sugar-coated bullet? A bullet that hits you, but you are so sweet, you don't hear. But when you go at home, say, what's wrong here, man? What that mean? What that start questioning? That is the film. That why the film, it has to elevate you, to teach you something, not to entertain you. The moment that you fall in the trap of entertainment, you are eating a McDonald's. You see? But when the moment that you watch a film that educates you, it's like, well, I like that film. And you go back. But at McDonald's, you don't say, I like McDonald's. Every day is the same taste. Doesn't leave a trace on you, a taste or different taste.
So which movie is that? The one that wounded you?
No, but I said to you, the American Prime Evil, I was never expecting them to tell that thing. I was never, ever expecting that. I took it for granted that they are in denial, permanent denial.
Still keep an eye open.
So now I start seeing an Indian girl who start fighting for her. I see a Mormon fighting against what they call an Anglo-Saxon. You say, wow, whoa, with all the brutality. I see the corruption. It reminded me of the Third World. To wipe an entire thing, the 1800 happened. So, but at least they're telling the truth, right? The foundation. I was never expecting that. That is the film that I've struck me.
During the early filmmaking in Somalia, has there come out a style of filmmaking?
You see, there is a, you see, we have one style, science of filmmaking. Somali waxaa la yidhahdaa is a land of poets, okay? There is oral poetry, the gift of the voice of the poem. But the painters, they are oral, what do you call it? The poetry, visual poetry. It's called visual poetry. The Somalis, they have that gift. Cannot be even a good filmmaker. But remember, when you see a film made by a Somali, the first 2-3 scenes that you see it is a visual poetry. It's in the DNA. The people might speak the poetry language, but this who got the DNA, the disease, that is the style. They have that. It become inherent. Yes. What else? Sorry, ما في رسالة feeling here? Film Paradiso indirectly tells my life. You see, but I met even the director in Italy. And Giuseppe Tornatore. You see, Tornatore is from Sicily, the southern part of Italy. And Sicily is considered the African part of Europe. You know that. And we have a similar aspect of life. They have the mafia, we have the qabil. You see, the mafia, you are organization, we have the qabil. You see, but they have the mafia. We have the same attitude. They have they don't consider, and that's what amazes me when I came here, seeing all the girls dressed in black. In Sicily, all the girls, they dress in black. You see, that amazes me. So, but nevertheless, Giuseppe Tornatore, in his film, he had an industry who supported him. I don't have an industry. I don't have even a country who supports me. I might be a mad person or a loose cannon. In Somalia, you know, the artist, markii la qadayna ama la cashayna madaxda fanaaniintu waa heesaan, no? But they never take it seriously what they say. They never take seriously. where are the singers? So that is our level of identification of artists and art people. So I met him and I said to him, he saw Tree for Life and what do you call it? This editor who edited my film, he is the edited the sound of the sound track of the, what do you call it? The Gladiator, the first Gladiator. And after this film, he became famous. When I was shooting this film, I called him and I said, he said, Abdulkadir, you cannot afford me. I said, motherfucker, you can say whatever you want. We shared the breads, what do you call it? A pizza. No, the pizza. It's a, what they call tramezzino. The tramezzino was small, the piece of bread. And I said, you are talking to me nonsense now? No, man. He sent me a limousine at the airport. And he said, I'm famous. I said, I will do it for you free of charge. I said, motherfucker, we are bounded until death tore apart. The death tears apart, but you always edit my film. Fuck you, man. I'm not interested in you. So do you understand that? So what do you call what I'm trying to tell you? I wanted to make a film, and I wrote the script. I was in Burkina Faso at the headquarters of the Pan-African Federation of Filmmakers when they landed in Mogadishu, Operation Restore Hope. And I was with a neighborhood of one great actor of Burkina Faso. His name is Idrissa Ouedraogo. If you saw the film, Tilai and all these things. And he had a son. Now he's the Speaker of the Parliament, that son, in Burkina Faso. He was sitting under us and he said, Daddy, yes. When he watched the television, he said, these people, they don't have heroes. Why, he saw the American movie, you know, when the people, soldiers land in the bar, someone has to go against them. He said, these people, they don't have heroes. He said, Daddy, it's not the situation like that. But that question struck me. I went to my room and I started questioning myself. Did Somalis have heroes? And who are our heroes? Another hero, waxaan u naqaanaa ninka dadka dilo, soo ma? I said, no, man. Who is the hero? The whole night I haven't slept. The next morning, waxay ugu soo dhacay, we have a hero, laakiin the nomads hate him. They ridiculize him. You know that? Egal Shidat. You know why? He doesn't have the nomadic attitude and nomadic behavioral pattern. Why? Hero, or nin raga waa iska celi ninka heroes wuxuu leeyahay no. Nadaji. Cool down. Let's solve the issue. Let's find the solution. Waa ninkii yiri maamaadaas fully hooyadii ma gablanto. Because why he didn't follow the norms of the Qariskatur or Geljirhano? Motherfucker, that is the hero. Why? The definition of hero came from Galkayo. And I said, okay, how I divert that? That Galkayo had a hero, but they never give him the value of a hero. We were ready working, Universal Picture from Hollywood. They came, they were working together. They wanted to make a film. They tried to squeeze it. No, the cultural here, the cultural there. I said no. And the director of photography was Dante Spinotti. You know Dante Spinotti? He made The Last of the Mohican, The Insider, and he was born in Somalia. And he speaks Somali. Gianni Quaranta, Room with a View, the set curator. I know him. He's an Oscar winner. This is another Oscar winner. All of that character I combined together. Universal was interested. What happened at September 11? Sorry, sir. At this moment, we cannot make any film where there is too much Assalamu alaikum. That is, since then I have written more than 25 scripts. And one of among them that I want to shoot here is called Somalitude. Not solitude, eh? Somalitude. Maskaxdayda nooga jirta. Reer hebel hadhow waa mugtaha, haddaan laf hebel ahay, anuu this abada. Somalitude. How we are going to solve the problem? I want to shoot in Minneapolis, not any part else. Yes. Why in Minneapolis? Look at yourself. Why in Minneapolis? Eh? You ask yourself, why in Minneapolis? You see the reason why? You are entrapped into this fractionism, right? There are good elements, there are bad elements, there are everything. Epitomizes everything. Epitomizes the Somalitude. The other day when I came here, there was when they were showing the film at the Cedar Center, I went to have a breakfast in a Magayet. And the funny thing, I was sitting in a corner, they were showing the football team. And the elders, they were sitting there and they start talking in tribal terms. Wallahi, ninkaas waa reer mudug, Ilaaha kugu dhashay. That's fantastic. I didn't have a camera. Football keepers, waxuu dheelayay University Michigan. Wallahi, billahi waa reer mudug. Ana rag dhalay waay. Iska celi rag gabdho. Wara football kii dhan waxa loo bedelay tribal war. So I love it that quraacda waa bay loobi. Ayagan fiirso u leexday marka. I didn't have the camera. Wallahi billahi I didn't have the camera. Waa duubi lahaa. That is the reason why. You took it for granted why maalin kastaad aragta adiga, no? Like think about it, reflect it. When you have that, what will be the future generation? Yeah? How are you going to explain that?
This generation is clean though.
Yeah? This generation, you know, one of the things that I love about Minneapolis? The young ladies and the mamas. You know why? I'm telling you the honest. They are the future who will serve this.
Say that.
No, wallahi, I'm telling you the honestly. They are the future. So I rely on them, and my hope is 99.9% rely on their shoulders, unless they don't become a Coca-Cola generation. You see, Coca-Cola generation, waxaa la yidhahdaa, the people who grow up with consumerism, the mindset of consumerism. Coca-Cola, I used the term Coca-Cola for colonization. I didn't use the colonization, I said Coca-Colization. I don't use the term colonization, but I say Coca-Colization.
Okay, we have time
Yes.
for one last question.
One more question.
Yeah. I'm very sorry to excite. Yes.
Okay, now I'm gonna give my question to him.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. This is like very beautiful. Like originally from Sudan, that I can still relate to it, and it's just I think part of it is just like the experiences. There's a lot of similarities. Like
You came from Sudan?
I'm from Sudan. Yeah, I was born and raised over there.
Gadala Gubara, you know him?
Yeah, for sure.
Huh?
Yep.
Gadala Gubara was a friend of mine.
Oh wow.
Gadala Gubara is one of the great Sudanese filmmakers. He passed away.
Yeah. That's one of the things actually I wanted to ask you about is like creating an imaginary. Because part of it is just like the stories of post-colonial nation building in those countries we went through, like in Africa primarily. And it's the same thing, just in the third world in general. We went through similar processes like disintegration of the state-wise and just fall into those traps of like tribalism, all those like with the madness of violence but it's still, how can we like try to rebuild on that like imaginary that goes beyond the nation for something bigger like Pan-Africanism and connecting that and trying to build something together, and also like because there's a severing of ties that happen between generations between like your generation and the younger people, for example, and the same thing even in Sudan. Like a few people will know of Jadala Jubara in Sudan. Like a lot of us actually grew up not even seeing his films being screened or knowing of him. So that's the thing, that how can we try to build a connection, and that's part of it, like the wisdom of the elders. How can we build on that and try to work something that to create a new imaginary, because part of it is just like giving birth to something new with filmmaking, but artists in general, as you said, it's like guiding us and showing us the way for like a better future for everyone.
Okay, combine your question, so we'll combine it.
No, but yeah, okay, so my question was more.
No, man, no, shoot straight, man. Okay, let me tell you one thing. Okay, you asked a fundamental question. You see, people think about when they do an art, about the market and international aspect, and they are wrong. Why? Charity begins at home. There is no a tree where they have the roots upstairs on the sky. The tree has the roots on the floor. So you start talking to your people. And that recognition comes from your people. Then the others say, who the fuck is he? When your people recognize you. But you don't start recognition from the outside. Healing is the same process. Don't expect healing coming from abroad, but you start healing from within your society. And the actors who built that bridge, you see, they say Rome is not built in one day. You bring one brick to the other, to the other, to the other. You pass the baton to the future generation, and they start doing it. But you have to unblock the mind, and you have to release all that thing. And it's not an easy task. It's a painful task. And that's the reason why I always believe that an artist, to be an artist in Africa, is to commit suicide. I'm telling you, it's a suicidal aspect. Why you go against the wall? You go against the funding. You go against every rule. Why they don't want you to talk? They don't want you to do anything else. Your own government says to you, why you don't have any better solution than wasting money and everything in there? You know, the whole continent of Africa is entrapped. There is a club in Paris. It's called the Club of Paris. They said to the government, they have a priorities. Here you don't have a priorities, but there you have a priority. So the government has to fulfill those priorities. Health, education, art is not included. How you are going to work in that condition? But you have to work, right? And when they fuck you within that culture aspect itself. And when you heal, you have to heal with that culture. You don't heal from somewhere else. But if you are not equipped to heal that society, you are doomed, right? Well, that is the question, yes.
My question was like the film that you're trying to make here in Minnesota.
Sorry?
The film that Minnesota.
An raba inan sameyo.
Okay, what is it about and how can we help you?
Simple. You can help me when I see that you are united. Then I can say I can land my plane there. But if you are a small island in Red Hebel, where do my plane I land it? Red Hebel? No, I will not land in Red Hebel. Do you understand now? But when you build something collectively that is yours and in Somali, it gives me strength and I know that there is a base there, I can land it. I don't want to patronize you, but that's the reality, Habib. haddaan adig ku imaado waxaa leeleeyahay ninka Abdulkadir ah reer Xasan u tagay ay reer Xalimo u tagay annaga nooma imaan war hada reer Xalimo reer Xasan maaha. How do we build that collective? idinka timaado waay ma taamsama marka idinka wax dhistaan anigu waa ku dhiiran karaa inaan idin la dhiso inaan wax idin qabto waa ku dhiiran karaa. I don't want to be lying to you. Somalitude aan kuu sheega waxa waaye we live in a prison ourselves. nin la arka xabsiyo ku jira. Let's free ourselves and understand that we have to build something common oo anaga aan lena. I hope that I don't want to bother you, but sorry. Yeah? Hoy maxaa dhacay? Nobody can answer now. Hoy maxaa dhacay? Can you answer me? Hoy maxaa dhacay?
No.
And directly I was talking about Somalia. Maxaa dhacay? Can you tell me what happened to our country? Eh? No, you don't know what happened in our country. Any case, Ilahay na la garab galo. Thank you all for having been around.
Thank you. And so we're really excited to continue programming. The final segments of our programming is ending this Sunday. We're going to have a 2-part workshop on Saturday and Sunday in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood at the Mixed Blood Theater from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. with Warda, who's coming from all the way from the United Kingdom and is here with us. And so it's going to be an immersive workshop those 2 days on the art of storytelling and really around the perspectives of being in theater. So please follow us on all social media channels, the Qalanjo Project on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we will be having tonight's recording on YouTube, so it's available and open source for our community. Thank you all for joining us tonight.
Please make sure to sign up for the workshop of Warda because it is one that you have to, where it's limited space, so we want people to register so we know how many people are coming. So please make sure to check the websites for